Is that it?
Hello, Chris. Oops. Hi.
How you doing, Kirstie?
Not too bad. It's been a ride and a half so far.
I don't know how you people are doing. You're like machines.
It's exciting. I'm still buzzing 8 hours later. So
Yeah, I mean, after you, we're bringing EMEA online, so Tessa will be up with a bunch of speakers, but we'll talk about that after we're done. I actually am back on. I think I was here 7 hours or 8 hours ago.
yeah.
I think I'm back on, slightly tired, still have really good hair. And what we're going to do now is we're going to ask you to present, because you were originally presenting. And then
Yes.
when we came up with this concept, we thought we need a facilitator or a guide for each 8-hour region. And then we said, of course, Kirstie Magowan.
Yeah.
So are you ready, after you've watched and consumed all this, to be vivacious and energetic and give us your all?
I am, Chris. I've enjoyed putting my presentation together, and I just hope it comes across as well as all the ones we've seen already. It's a bit daunting to follow that crew.
Yeah. I think you'll do just fine.
I
So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you.
And we should be on the air. And if you want to go ahead and start your share, as soon as you've got your screen up and your presentation going, I will mute and hide myself out.
Thank you. Where's it gone?
A lot of great feedback on Twitter. We found feedback on YouTube, feedback on Twitter, feedback. There's like feedback everywhere. I feel like Janet Jackson in a really bad song. Okay, feedback.
So that's looking right now, is it, Chris? I'm sharing online.
Nope. Right now we still have your video of you.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me escape that and
You've been a facilitator so long in telling people how to share their screens. You've not shared your own.
screen share desktop. Okay, I forgot to hit the right button. That's what.
There you go. Now I see your screen.
Yeah, great. Okay. So now you've got my presentation there. Thank you, Chris. So anyway, people, I'm here to offer you an opportunity. I want you to take the chance to learn from my mistakes, sharing those lovely opportunities I created for myself with excessive enthusiasm and that typical Kiwi try anything once attitude. You know, failing at something, no matter how bad it seems at the time, that's just not the end of your career. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and just try again. Learn from what you did wrong. Just make sure that you don't make that same mistake again. The mistakes you make in service management are generally not fatal. They can be painful. They may cause you to skid off the road, but they are survivable. And what's more, they will, if you let them, make you a better exponent in your area of expertise. Now, when I put my request in to speak at TFT12 a couple of months back, I just launched my blog, which concentrates on common sense in service management. Now, until I put that online, I had really assumed that I didn't really have anything new to share. I mean, I don't have a degree in IT or computer science. I don't get into statistics and analysis. I just fell into service management by chance, and I just found that I'm actually pretty good at it. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, the response to my writing has been a little bit mind-blowing. I've had so much feedback, and I really have been stunned by the number of people who've contacted me, and just to say thank you for giving them some down-to-earth advice that they can use. Now look, the thing is, while this is all really nice for my ego, I really don't think I'm saying anything new. In fact, I know that I'm not. It's just plain common sense. But I think we just get so bound up with ITIL, COBIT, project management, ISO standards, processes, functions, and metrics. I mean, our heads are swimming with acronyms, thoughts of all the organisations we should be joining, and just IT jargon in general. And we've just forgotten what we are actually here for. I mean, and that is to provide a service to people, not to machines. We're here for flesh and blood human beings who are trying to do their jobs and to live their lives using the IT services that we are providing. We are guilty of concentrating on the tools and forgetting about the actual outcome that we are trying to achieve. Now, the plan for this presentation is to talk about how I have learned from the mistakes I've made during my time in service management. And I'll admit, there have been a few, but I am not ashamed of them because I have learned from each and every error of judgment that I've made along the way. Now, I sort of feel that I should add just a wee disclaimer here. This presentation is all about getting things wrong, but I do want to say that I actually do manage to get things right, and far more often than I mess them up. But this is not a story of success. This is all about the botch-ups that paved the way to success for me. What I discovered as I thought about the things I did wrong was that there is a common thread that runs through them. They all happened because I was so hell-bent on getting the processes right that I forgot what I was there for, the customers. I put technology and frameworks ahead of the very reason I was there, and that was my real mistake. My balance was just completely wrong. What I should have done was to concentrate on the customer and fit the best practice around their needs and their wants. So while sure, I was getting all the best practice into the business, I was actually doing it for the wrong reason, and that really made it bad practice. I was trying to make IT run better. What I needed to concentrate on was satisfying the customers, both of the IT department and of the business as a whole, and bringing them together under a common umbrella of best practice. Boy, I can tell you, my co-workers at the time must have hated me. I came back from my ITIL Foundation training full of the joys of this new framework that was going to change our little IT world. And this is how I saw myself. But, I realise now that they saw something completely different when I walked through the door. Probably something more along these lines.
We are born. You will be assimilated.
I am Locutus, a Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
You will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile. We are Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to the service us. Resistance is futile.
That was probably pretty scary stuff from the other side, and I apologise unreservedly to those poor people I worked with those years ago. So, let's get on to my first mistake. Now, this relates to this whole amazing CMDB idea. I can hear you probably saying, oh no, she didn't. Well, I'm afraid, yes, she did. Now, just prior to my ITIL rebirth, the business had gone through a disastrous lease return. We honestly didn't have a clue where the equipment that needed to be returned actually was. Now, I spent hours on phone calls and crawling around under desks trying to find the right bits of kit to return. Obviously, some better record keeping was needed, but I can tell you that what was not needed was a full-on configuration management database. This really was a catalogue of error from concept to completion. The last thing an ITSM novice should do is try to navigate the complexities of a CMDB, but we had the technology in our shiny new ITSM tool, so I got the green light to go ahead and set it up. Now, if I had actually taken the time to chat to our equipment provider, I would have found out that they actually didn't care about the serial numbers of the equipment they were getting back. Often it didn't match up with what was on the original spreadsheet anyway, due to warranty exchanges and the like. We only used dumb terminals, so there were no configuration options. They didn't hold any data that needed to be erased. So all that was really needed in our asset list was a list of locations of terminals by model number. We didn't even need to capture the serial numbers on that list. But no, I catalogued each and every serial number, and I stuck lovely asset codes on each and every bit of IT kit in the company. And yes, you guessed it, that included keyboards and even each individual mouse. And yes, I cringe at the very thought of it now. So, what did I learn from that crazy exercise? Well, what I feel now is that the only bit of IT equipment that really matters is probably sitting in your server room. Anything outside of there is in reality virtually disposable. So my advice would be only record and monitor what you have to. Stop doing it just because you can. So that was my first mistake, and I'm going to use a little bit of Kiwi nostalgia here to remind us of that.
That was my mistake. That was my mistake. I went out to see if I could raise it out again. That was my mistake. Well, that was my mistake. But all I needed was a friend to make me stop and think again. To pull me up, pull me through. Daddy ho, you have my feet.
Yeah, so I really do wish that someone had picked me up and made me think again at that stage. So that was a pretty big mistake, but I do know that I was probably not the only ITIL novice who did this. Perhaps the only one stupid enough to admit it in an international public forum, though. But life goes on. So let's go straight now to my second mistake. And look, this probably is one that I am ashamed of, because it is really out of character for me. I was brought up to treat people with respect, but I found that many people working in IT don't do this. Laughing at the stupidity of users is a daily source of amusement, and I let myself get pulled into that culture. Making fun of pebcak errors and dining out for weeks on the story of the remote user who, when asked to package up his computer and send it to us for repair, sent us the keyboard, mouse and monitor, but left the box sitting under his desk. Now, he was not stupid. He was an extremely successful share trader. We were stupid for assuming that he knew how the technology worked. Now look, if he had tried to have a conversation with me about futures, options and stop-loss contracts, I would have looked every bit the idiot to him. So please, just stop with the jokes, the eye-rolling, the sniggers, the loser signs while you're on the phone. Treat your customers with the respect they deserve. Why should they understand IT? That is your job. Now, while we're at it, how about we drop the word user from the ITSM vocabulary? In my opinion, it just dehumanises the people that we are providing services to. There are just so many negative connotations to the title user. Someone who takes and gives nothing in return. Someone who uses other people to gain an advantage, even a drug addict. Add to those meanings some of the lovely acronyms that have arisen in IT departments like the BDU, brain dead user, and the like. I just think perhaps it's time for a change. Now, let's move right along to mistake number 3. Now, this one's all about being seduced by shiny technology. Now, in my private life, I am a technology addict. I have tech-enabled gadgets and gizmos galore, and I love to learn new skills, master new applications, and I have a need to understand how and why things work. But my first ITSM role was not as any sort of technical specialist. I was brought on board to establish a service desk and to get that all-important single point of contact working. So why on earth did I take it upon myself to learn about networking, databases, and other technical specialties? Now, I'm all for multitasking. That's the way I live my life. But in this role, I really did need to work on establishing the service desk, providing excellent customer service and improving the reputation of the IT department. They had enough technical specialists. They didn't have enough communicators, and that's what they hired me for. So all that I served to do by learning all this wonderful technological information was to divide my attention and to take the focus away from where it needed to be, and that was on keeping our customers happy. I mean, this was the end goal. We wanted to see people like this. Now, I'll leave him behind and we'll move on to mistake number 4. Now, this one takes me straight back to ITIL. Now, I don't want you to get me wrong. I am a huge fan of the ITIL life cycle and what it represents, which is the collected wisdom of some very clever people who really get how service management works. But it is not a religion. That's where I went wrong. I worshipped at the feet of ITIL, and I did it for a long time. As I mentioned earlier, I probably drove my colleagues absolutely crazy. Every second sentence that came out of my mouth related to how wonderful ITIL was. And I fell into the trap of thinking that this was something that we could pick up and implement. Well, I'm here to tell you, you cannot implement ITIL. And I now cringe every time I hear a presenter or read a blog telling me how they're going to help you do the impossible. What is worse are the claims from some tool vendors that their products can automate your ITIL implementation. ITIL is guidance that you use to help you put best practice into your IT service provision. Now, I found this quote from Bruce Lee a little while back that I think hits the nail right on the head as far as how you interact with the ITIL framework and any other best practice framework. Absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own. Now, however, when I tweeted this out to my network, I got a response telling me that by suggesting that, I was diluting the value of ITIL. Well, I completely disagree. I think that you augment its value by adding new aspects that are unique to the business that you are supporting. Having done ITSM consultancy in some vastly different enterprises, I can say that from my experience, there are flavours of service management that might be a perfect fit for a corporate financial organisation that are just not going to float in a manufacturing company. Grabbing lean elements from your manufacturing processes might be very appropriate in the second case and totally off the mark in the first. You need to do what works for you and for your business. I liken the concept of implementing the best practice that we find in ITIL to raising a baby through to adulthood. There is a mass of best practice advice out there that we can adopt and adapt to our own particular circumstances. But I have not met a parent yet who has successfully negotiated the minefield of raising a child who credits implementing Dr. Spock with the successful outcome. Now, to those of you who were like I was and proudly proclaim yourselves to be ITIL zealots, gurus, or evangelists, this is not a good thing. Just move your focus ever so slightly and be zealous about best practice in service management, regardless of the tools, frameworks, or standards you employ to help you get there. Adopt and adapt. Please do not implement. As an aside, I have seen some online community discussions saying that ITIL is only for large organisations, due to the fact that it outlines over 100 different roles, a number that only the largest businesses could support. Well, look, that is just absolute rubbish. Firstly, just because ITIL names this many roles does not mean that you need to use them all. Secondly, these are roles. They are not full-time employees. If you decided to adopt 10 of these roles, that does not mean that you need 10 people to undertake the tasks involved. In a small organisation, these are nowhere near full-time roles. They are simply responsibilities that will be undertaken alongside the day-to-day work of the IT department. So now, my next lesson. Now this one I learned was to avoid overcomplicating things. I've learned, again from bitter experience, to keep it simple. The KISS principle has become my mantra. Just keep chanting, keep it simple, stupid. Now, if you find you really need complexity, just remember that it is far easier to add it than it is to remove it. The mistake that drove this message home related to the categorization of incidents. Setting up a new toolset, we created category after category with screeds of subcategories nested in those. Now this created a number of issues. Firstly, there were multiple ways that the same incident could be logged. A customer who had forgotten their password and locked themselves out of their account could have a call logged as profile, locked, or as user, reset password. And I'm not even going to go into whether that is an incident or a service request. Now all that did was confuse the metrics that could be extracted. Secondly, it was just too damn confusing for the service desk team, and we ended up with 90% of calls actually being logged as general, or network, other, because it was just too hard to work out the correct categories. Now, categorization really comes down to a large degree to the metrics that you need to extract from your tool. If you don't plan to report on it, then you really don't need to record it. And if you're not going to act on those results, don't produce those reports in the first place. In this scenario, we ended up with around 30 top-level categories and a total of 300 second levels. You can imagine how the graphs looked at the end of the month. The statistics were pretty well useless. They didn't allow a problem manager to gain any useful insights, and they just confused the hell out of the IT management team. After a period of time, probably way too long as no one wanted to admit that we'd got it so wrong, we bit the bullet. We trashed the categorization system and we started from scratch. We ended up with a first run of 5 first level and 25 second level categories. Suddenly the reports made sense. The problem manager could see that we had a huge number of incidents related to customer profiles. Previously, these calls had been logged in so many different ways that there was no way to see the patterns. When we needed to report in future on specific issues that we were concerned about, we simply added a correct category, used it for as long as necessary to get the data we needed, and then we retired it. sensible simplicity is going to win out over crazy complexity any day of the week. Now, while I'm talking about overcomplicating things, and this really relates back to our previous presentation from April Allen, is don't overcomplicate the knowledge you share. Never write 300 words when 50 will do. An over-engineered knowledge base article will have the opposite effect to what was intended. If you're in the middle of solving an incident for a customer and you search the knowledge base for assistance, you do not want to find a 5-page diatribe that describes the steps to be taken to the nth degree. Break it down into bullet points. Make these concise and easy to follow. If it really takes 5 pages to describe what is needed to fix the issue, then I would suggest that you probably have a need to escalate that to problem management fairly quickly. So now let's talk about change management. Now, this mistake again relates back to the KISS principle, and probably a little bit of a trap for new consultants in the ITSM space. When you're working as a consultant, you're there because supposedly you are the expert. When you're used to being in customer service mindset and thinking that the customer is always right, it is very difficult to find yourself facing off against your customer and having to tell them that they are wrong. Now, my customer was determined to create marvelously complex change workflows to cover absolutely every minute step and variable in their change process. Now, I have to admit that there was a part of me that really wanted to see just how well the tool we were implementing was able to handle these incredibly complex plans that looped and branched all over the place. But I really should have sat down with the change team and talked about this just a little bit more sternly than I did. Yes, the change plans worked beautifully. The number of change-related incidents decreased dramatically until they were virtually non-existent. The customers were very happy, as this had been a real issue previously, and this was the driver behind getting a new ITSM tool in place. So, in that respect, the change management initiative was a total success, delivering happy customers and a stable infrastructure. But the change process was so greedy for resource that several additional staff had to be employed just to manage the overheads that were created by processes that had up to 100 tasks assigned out for each and every change. After 6 months, we sat down and reviewed the process, and really it was still delivering exactly what the customer was wanting. But the financial cost was way outside the scope of the original plan. In fact, the additional costs of running the change management process exceeded the penalties that they had been previously paying by over 100%. What's more, the frustration levels experienced by the teams actually doing the change work was very high. They were constantly completing tasks one after the other for the same change. We had to do something. So we spent time examining the historical change-related incidents, and it didn't take long to see that pretty well each and every one of the issues should have been picked up during the user acceptance testing phase of the process. But prior to the new process being put in place, nobody from my customer's side of the fence was involved with ensuring that their customers actually did this effectively. What's more, the test plans that had been supplied to customers really didn't cover the areas they should have, and there was no load testing done at any stage. The new plans had introduced some more testing phases, and these were being carried out by the vendor. They'd taken a lot of that responsibility away from their customers, responsibility that was actually theirs contractually, so no wonder the customers were so happy with the new process. So what we did was to re-engineer the testing side of the process. We pushed the onus back out where it belonged with the people who were going to be using the service. They were provided with support, comprehensive testing plans, and automated load testing was put into place. A spirit of cooperation and partnership was established between vendor and customer, and we still managed to keep the very low level of change-related incidents without losing customer satisfaction. The financial and administrative overheads disappeared. Win-win for everybody. But to be fair, if we had not gained the customer confidence by producing consistently error-free releases with those complex change plans, we probably would have had little chance of gaining their support for the new testing processes. So maybe these seemingly over-engineered plans were necessary in the short term to win back the affection and support of the customer. Sometimes it is necessary just to take a step backwards in order to take 2 steps forward. Now, the final mistake I'm going to talk to you about is all about not knowing when to stop. Sometimes the businesses that need your help most of all are just not mature enough to adopt anything but the simplest processes. I was given the task of establishing best practice processes in an IT department of around 60 people working in 3 distinct silos: development, business analysis, and support. Each separate department had its own lunchroom, its own water cooler and bathrooms, so there was never any danger at all of them mingling and cooperating on any initiatives at any level. Not only was I faced with a very definite them and us scenario between IT and the business, but there was a them, us, and that other lot attitude within IT. They didn't trust each other, and they did not want any part of working together. They were so far apart that each used a different tool for tracking calls, each held a separate IT asset register, and each maintained their own instance of Active Directory. I had been subcontracted by a vendor who had won the business of getting all 3 departments using one ITSM toolset, and I was there to introduce them to best practice and get them started on the basics. Unfortunately, no one from the management team had been brave enough to tell these 3 very disparate teams what was about to happen. So when I turned up on a Monday morning, excited about a new assignment and ready to get moving, I was completely ambushed. The CIO called a meeting of all 3 teams, introduced me to the staff, and asked me to tell them what was happening. She then turned on her heel and walked out the door. This was the first they had heard of a new toolset, best practice, ITSM or ITIL, and nobody was at all happy about being forced to step out of their silos and work together. Now, that's when I should have seen the writing on the wall, and I should have left then and there and got away as quickly as possible. There really was no way that this initiative had any chance of working, at least not at that moment in time. Really, I guess this situation was not so much my mistake. I was very much the meat in the sandwich, but it certainly was a major error in judgment by the management team at this organisation and probably the vendor as well. They were responding to pressure from the business to improve the way IT worked and interacted with the rest of the organisation. They desperately needed a level of service management. But what they needed far more urgently was a program aimed at cultural change. Really, they needed to get Karen Ferris and balanced diversity on the phone pretty urgently. But there was absolutely no way that the planned initiative was going to work, not with those distinct and incompatible silos in place. They really might as well have taken their investment and set fire to it. So, after banging my head against 3 very well-built brick walls and dealing with sometimes quite aggressive resistance, it really was time for me to tell the CIO that there was absolutely no point wasting their money and my time on the current initiative. There was a lot of team building, cultural change, and breaking down of barriers needed before ITIL or any other framework had even the faintest hope of making a difference. Now, it actually took that organisation over 2 years of concerted effort to bring about organisational change before they were ready for the work that we had planned for that month. It was a fairly painful 2 years for them, and around a third of their IT staff ended up leaving, as they were just not prepared to make the changes that were needed. So, I mean, although it is a course of last resort, sometimes when you can't change the people, you simply have to change the people. So now reading back over this, I realise that I probably sound like a total incompetent ass. But really, if you have never made a mistake, then in my opinion, you just haven't been trying hard enough. You will never be the best that you can be if you don't push the boundaries, take chances, and be prepared to be wrong. Every piece of work I do, whether that is in service management or content creation, benefits from the experiences gained in the previous one. The only stupid mistakes are the ones that you do not learn from. I mean, perhaps assimilation is not always wrong, but you do have to want to become part of the collective. After all, it could be better than the alternative. So what I'm trying to say is that when you try hard, you will make mistakes. Grasp those opportunities those mistakes as opportunities, grow from them and move on. And never be afraid to say, sorry, I was wrong. When you sit back at your desk after TFT 12 is over, let your mind wander back to some of the things that perhaps you have messed up in the past. Now, if you're anything like me, you've probably buried these in the do not disturb area of your mind. Well, it's time to pull them out, dust them off, and stop being embarrassed about them. Use your mistakes to teach others in our community how to avoid the pitfalls you have encountered. By doing this, we can give people a chance to avoid our mistakes and let them push the envelope that little bit further and make some new mistakes, or rather, learning opportunities that they can in turn share with others. Stop just sharing your success stories. We learn more from one failure than we can from 10,000 successes. So one final quote from Thomas Edison. Aren't we fortunate that he was never scared to make a mistake? Negative results are just what I want. They're just as valuable to me as positive results. I can never find the thing that does the job best until I find the ones that don't. So, any questions?
That was wonderful. I feel ambushed because you questioned your presentation skills. So I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, you said, how am I going to follow up all those speakers? And you just did this absolutely amazing job. So we got a couple questions from Google and two from Twitter. It's important to let people know that it's getting late here in North America. The sun's just about to come up in England.
Yeah.
And well, what time is it there?
It is 20 to 6 in the evening.
So there was a tweet here that said, I'll say it, I said it before, I'll say it again, if we can't handle disaster recovery with grace and ease, we're in the wrong industry. Mm-hmm. And you talked a lot about mistakes and sharing your mistakes. How important is it in this day and age to be so transparent and authentic with your mistakes?
I just think we need to be. I mean, if you can't learn from what you've done wrong, you need to share those mistakes with other people. Otherwise, we're just doomed to repeat them over and over again. I mean, the mistakes I made, I think, are pretty common, and there's probably thousands of people who've made the same ones. Hopefully, by sharing those, the next generation of knowledge workers are not going to make the same ones. I mean, it'd be great if they can come up with some great new learning opportunities. I mean, we need to be willing to share and not be embarrassed about what we've done wrong. I mean, some of these mistakes I've hidden away for a few years because I was pretty, especially that CMDB one. I mean, that was just a nightmare. It was the most ridiculous thing anybody could ever have done. But I learned from it, and when I went out consulting, I made sure nobody else made that mistake.
Right. In this era of uber transparency, when we're dealing with mistakes, I see two routes that most people try to deal with, and it can be in anything. It can be in IT or it can be marketing. There's this, oh, we made a mistake, please forgive me. Everyone sees it. And then there's this culture of, if I don't acknowledge it, it didn't exist, which is much different than denying it, right? I could deny mistakes all day long. But if I don't acknowledge it, I don't see that rat crawling up my leg. I don't see that. What is culture is a real sensitive issue. What is it that empowers people, or can you give us some wisdom on that?
I mean, I think. I'm a New Zealander. We're possibly a lot more open about our screw ups than a lot of cultures. We are pretty open about things. We don't get embarrassed quite so easily as some. And I mean, I might have just committed professional suicide by telling everybody all the things that I've done wrong, but so be it. I want to own those mistakes. I want everybody out there to be able to say, okay, that's true. I mean, maybe I am saying I'm an ITIL zealot or I'm an ITIL guru. Well, I mean, and if I can make one person stop and think, then maybe that's not something I should be. Maybe I need to expand my focus a bit more. That transparency I just think is so important. And now where you can't just sit in the little corner of your office in Denver or in Tauranga or in Budapest or wherever, we are so open to the rest of the world being able to see what we do. The minute you stick your head up in Twitter and say something that you believe in, or comment on a post and back to ITSM, I mean, you've got to be prepared for people to jump on you and say, I don't agree with you. I mean, and I don't care. If you don't agree with me, that's great. I really want to hear your arguments and why. And if you can prove to me that I'm wrong again, I'm happy to take that, because that's another way for me to learn. And if we can all get out there and be that honest and that willing to learn from other people, I mean, our industry can just keep growing and blooming, far into the future. I mean, what I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years of being socially connected is probably, many times what I learned in the 8 or 10 years before that. We live in such exciting times where we can blossom and learn from these things.
So, what can I say? I'm the host with the toys. What do you want? There is something to be said about being socially connected and owning your mistakes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I often get asked is, well, what happens if we do something? Because I think the service desk has the same problems as marketing, right? Don't let people see it. Don't let people know. Don't empower people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure finance, we need to have an accounting TFT, something for the accountants out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of them, because I think 2 people in the whole world own all the money. But I tell folks all the time, you really don't have to worry about it. Like 2 years ago, I would have said, struggle with it, because if you do say something on Twitter, people will they'll use it again. But now, no one's paying attention. I like it when I put up a blog post and people disagree with me.
I mean, I actually think that's achieved something. That's made people talk, and it's made people examine their own beliefs and ideas. So, I mean, I'm quite happy to be controversial. It's great. I mean, anything that can inspire some sort of connectivity. I mean, some of the arguments, well, I won't call them arguments, the vigorous discussions that we've had on Back to ITSM in the last couple of weeks they've been fascinating. I mean, it's great to see. It's great to see people being brave enough to disagree with people who a year ago they might have considered, you know, way up here in knowledge about ITSM, and now we've got fairly new entrants to the industry actually being prepared to challenge those people. Now that wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago.
I would hate to go take an ITIL Foundations class having been a member of the Facebook Back to ITSM group for more than 6 months, because you will devour that teacher. As far as being brave enough to say these things, you know, it is called the courage of your convictions. Yeah. It's not called the mildly feeling hopeful about your opinion. It's called the courage of your convictions.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to say what you really think and be prepared for someone else to stamp you down, or you be the one who does the stamping down when you see someone who says something you just think is wrong. I mean, who knows who's right? I mean, a lot of this is just opinion and feeling, and there may be no right answer, but I mean, have the courage of your convictions and go out there and say what you think. Don't just agree with people because it's the nice thing to do.
Right. And I think to that point, don't be contrarian, because being contrarian for the sake of a contrarian is interesting for an hour.
Yeah.
At 61 minutes, you're not contrarian. You're bored.
Yeah. And you're irritated.
So we've got Coop Scotty saying he's got a wonderful problem to have too much material to watch. We've got Matt Barron, who I tweeted out a great blog I just found of his today. I feel bad. I pride myself in keeping up with these things. Oh, by the way, I have mood lighting. So this is a connected system to the internet. It's called the Hue. So I thought I'd give us some mood lighting as we get ready to sunset. Should we try that mood?
Oh, I like it, Chris. I like it.
So we've got Matt Barron talking about this is just too much content to consume, and we're only 8 hours into it. We've got another 16 left, and at least one more outfit change. Yeah. And then Jason Crane just said, "Great job, April Allen, on the actionable and metrics." And there are some side discussions that aren't tagged with TFT. UX designer had mentioned something about named Snappier Wolf. He wanted to know, very insightful presentation from April. How does one sell knowledge management to a company who thinks they're doing it but they're not? We don't have April. You want to take a stab at Jason's question?
Yeah, I mean, I
how do you sell knowledge management to a company who thinks they're doing it but they're not?
Yeah, that is a tough one, because you know the only proof I guess of whether you are doing knowledge management is how much happier your IT team, your service desk team are. Do they feel that they are actually able to provide a better service? Are your customers more satisfied? Are their calls getting solved quicker? Can they self-service and solve those calls themselves? I mean, looking from the top down, I mean, you're probably not going to see that. You need to actually get there and talk to the people who are using the knowledge that's being provided, and see what they think. I mean, your statistics could help a bit by showing, you know, how quickly people are getting back to work and how satisfied your customers are, but yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, and it which brings up the whole conversation of, do we have the right metrics? A couple other shout-outs. Is it Fussbarication?
Yeah. Mr. Brooks.
Who is it?
That's Peter Brooks from South Africa.
That's Peter Brooks?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, apparently he's in South Africa, and he just said he's just waking up. James Gander had to go to bed, so good night, James. So it was good having you. And Patsy gives a big shout-out to Kirstie. Do you know Patsy Anderson?
I know Patsy very well. I did consultancy in the company that she worked for a few years, so worked very closely with Patsy. She's
Good.
a great service desk analyst.
You know, we probably should have banners and just have a donation fund to donate money to everybody who doesn't watch this, who will be unemployed in 3 years. Okay, so with that being said, should we get a laugh track for that one? Maybe. Okay. We're getting ready to bring Tessa online.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and, since we've got that coming up, I'll go ahead and share out that screen until we switch over.
Yeah.
And now everyone can watch me do my switch.
Yeah, very good. I tell you what I'm doing, Chris. I'm gonna go and have myself some energy drinks and try and stay awake for 24 hours.
All right, Kirstie, I'm going to go ahead and loop this, and we'll see everybody in a little bit.
Okay.